Thank you ever so much for joining us and providing that insight. We do now have some breaking news to bring you coming from Moscow, and the Kremlin is reportedly responding with caution to a sharp ultimatum issued by US President Donald Trump. Calling Trump's remarks serious, Russian officials say they need time to analyse the statement in which Trump warned Moscow it has 50 days to end the war in Ukraine or face a crippling 100% tariff on all goods. The Kremlin adds that President Vladimir Putin will respond if he considers it necessary. At the same time, Moscow has accused Washington and Brussels of sending signals that encourage Kyiv to prolong the conflict. Just to provide some more context there, US President Donald Trump also speaking about third-party tariffs which would be placed on nations which are currently buying energy from Russia. That includes China, India and other leading economies globally. So the ramifications of this situation is huge, not just affecting Russia if those sanctions come in, but as mentioned, several other countries as well. Joining us to discuss Russia's response here to this news that we brought you overnight, Mark Sutherland, a geopolitical commentator who is joining us from London. Mark, did you expect this response from Moscow, saying caution is needed and that a response will take time? Or is this the standard response we expect given such an ultimatum from the US president?
Thomas, good to join you. On the one hand, I am not surprised, especially in the light of the events that are going on in Ukraine and Trump's frustration in regard to not being able to come to a deal in regard to that conflict. And there is a huge arc here of history to explain. But I'm not surprised at all. I mean, your previous guest, Andrew, where we are, he's discussing what's been going on with China, with Taiwan, mentioning all the links, and it all comes back to the BRICS nations getting together. The bottom line is, America, of course, the dollar is still the reserve currency. The BRICS countries, unification there, they want a multipolar world. They are really flexing their muscles. The China economy, no matter what we think about it, of course, it is the biggest it is becoming the biggest economy in the world. It's a huge threat to America. That's a huge thing to discuss here. And of course, the alignment with Russia and China. They are relying on the industrial power of China. So there is to me, in my opinion, there's a continuity here. They will be talking to each other to then say, no, we must push back against these kind of comments from President Trump. I'm not surprised at all, Thomas.
Yes, Mark, let's look as well at not just tariffs and sanctions. Of course, Donald Trump talking about aid for Ukraine, talking about billions of dollars in military aid support heading to Kyiv. Also European leaders talking about that as well. So what significance could this have on the conflict? Will it extend a conflict that is already into its fourth year? Or is this a necessary deterrent that Donald Trump has decided is needed given the failure to agree to a ceasefire deal with this final ultimatum, potentially the last option with US intervention?
He wants to get people to the table, Thomas. He wants Zelensky, Russia to sit down and to thrash this out. And it is exasperation, I feel, on his part as well. So it's turning around and saying, right, I've now got to up the ante. The important thing is that we have to go back in history, and people may dispute this. But when the wall came down in 1989, NATO promised that it would not expand its NATO aggression up to the borders of Russia. It has then done that by other countries coming over under the NATO axis. That is what the grievance is in regard to Russia. Then, of course, the Minsk agreement around about 2014, and then going back on that. Then the what's happened in 2014 and another coup. So this is what um, he, others are reacting to, which is outside players playing and interfering with the Ukraine, with that axis, and Russia have turned around and said no more. We had enough. Now I'm not excusing the invasion at all. But when over here our previous Prime Minister Boris Johnson had the opportunity to then, there was a deal on the table to say, right, well, we negotiate this, and then he's flying over there and going to Zelensky, no, don't do this. The fact that no one has actually pushed for peace, except until then Donald Trump becomes President 47, to then push it. No matter what people think of him, his wanting a deal, he has then pushed that. He is frustrated with Vladimir Putin's reaction, and the death on both sides, the death toll is awful. And the consequences of that war, with all the death and destruction, are awful. But we have to see this exactly like what Andrew was saying in regard to Taiwan and China and history. We have to see this in a historical context. And Ukraine has a very, very unique history in regard to building up to the Second World War, what happened during it after with Stalin as well. And we have to understand this. It's very easy for so many of us to come up with quick, instant sound bites, because we're looking, and I'm not having a go at you or the station, but we're looking at the events now, and then we have to understand the build up to that. And there are many players that have been profoundly irresponsible. So when you then have Poroshenko leading before the coup, I will call it, in 2014, pushing out, then leaning towards Europe, and then eventually then going to back leaning to Russia, and then he gets kicked out, and then the consequences of that, and then how that happened, are extremely relevant now and have to be looked at. People, we want this war to end in Ukraine and Russia, and we want that to end as quickly as possible, with that, as I say, with all the casualties on both sides. And by then turning around and saying, okay, I'm going to give Ukraine the weapons that it needs. Yes, it's provocative. Yes, it's taking things to the brink again. So we will see. But he wants the two parties to sit down, and he's desperately trying to bang heads together, in my opinion.
Yes, absolutely. Mark, do stay with us. We have a related development. And according to reports, US President Donald Trump